It's okay. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay, and it's perfectly perfect to be you, because when you're you, you're setting other people free. You set other people free to be who they want to be. Until they see you do it, they'll feel like they can't. Yeah, be you, man. Be you. Please set other people free. And to my younger self, just fucking go, bro.
What up, y'all? Thank y'all for listening to Just F and Go podcast with myself, Sam Jimenez, and Charlie Herrera Villar. Thank y'all for tuning in. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, please don't forget to like, subscribe, share it, follow the Instagram at Just F and Go podcast. Tap in with us week to week. We're happy to be with you. And we got part 2 of episode 9 coming up for y'all right now. Charlie, how are you feeling after part 1?
I love part 1, bro. I think part 1 was really, I enjoy it, man. I enjoy learning about you, and I enjoy just fucking listening.
I appreciate that, man. And likewise, even though we've been on this journey for right now, this is going to be the 9th episode. Just like you had mentioned on the first part, we actually just haven't really interacted with each other in person. So starting this project during a pandemic has been a dope way to get to understand each other and learn each other. But also it was like the kind of idea was like, you know what, let's dig in a little deeper to show people ourselves, but also just to learn more about each other. As y'all saw in part 1 or heard on part 1, we Charlie interviewed me, and the whole idea was just to get to dive deeper into that. So part 2 is we're reversing roles now, and gonna learn a lot more about Charlie here and Charlie's own journey of life as not just a barber, but a father, a man, a human being. And it's exciting to get to do so. So Charlie, are you ready?
I'm as ready as I can be, bro.
uh, One of the things that I think is just dopest about your own story is your background, and getting to hear a little bit about that in a few episodes. Right, you are Mexican American, but you're also Mexican. Mexican and American. You've spent time on both sides of that Mexican American border. Um, how has that informed your own views, your values, your morals, your beliefs, not just from a cultural standpoint, but also getting to see both sides of that experience?
Yeah, it's been pretty interesting for me. It's been kind of both a struggle and liberating at the same time. So I've spoke before about how I don't feel like I connect with the culture so much, and I just don't feel Mexican enough, and I don't feel American because I wasn't born here. Um, but speaking on my family, so my family itself is just kind of different. My grandpa on my dad's side he was very big on socialism. He would go to, Costa Rica, Egypt, Russia. He would really be into that whole thing. And I grew up not being Catholic. I grew up Christian, so that already isolated me a little bit from the cultural identity of being Mexican. But with that socialist view and that Christian view, it really kind of ingrained that mentality of being for the people, of kind of anti-capitalist. And so for a long time, I grew up thinking that way and believing that. And that's all fine and dandy when you kind of live in Mexico somewhat, right? Like, you see literally, especially living in the border where I lived, you see the enemy in a way, in that mindset of like, oh, it's the U.S. But then you also see that once you live here, you're like, well, you kind of got to do what you got to do to survive here. You can't have too much of a socialist view and survive in a place like the Bay Area, right? Like it's a little bit more difficult if you keep on trying to give back everything you get. But that taught me to have a sweet spot for both. I kind of got to understand the capitalism and also the socialism that was ingrained in me. And I've loved it. I think I've been very lucky to be able to experience life in Juarez and life in the Bay Area, because Oakland specifically and the Bay has very much a kind of like this self-sustaining hustle. It's ingrained in us in here, and you're able to do what you want with that. If you want to give back to the community, which is a very much a Oakland thing, a Bay Area thing to do, it kind of helped me tie in all of that aspect of living for the people while still grinding and hustling. So to me, living in here has been the perfect combination for me to be able to blend the two states of minds that I grew up thinking about.
When you're talking about being for the people, uh, you know, one thing I think, how do you, are there specific things that you do? Are there the specific systems that you put in place for yourself to balance that like desire to hustle while also, caring about people? Are there specific moments in your life that you feel really drove that home for you? I know you talked a little bit about the nonprofit of my block before, right?
Hmm.
What is the driving force behind some of those things? And I know you talk a lot about, or you just talked about your grandfather and growing up in that,
Hmm.
but in your own personal journey,
Hmm.
what have been some of the most rewarding aspects of that for you?
You know what? It's changed over the years, because it's changed and it's always been the same thing. Kind of like you talked about in your shit, The Alchemist, right? The book The Alchemist, where fuck, we can't talk about it until people read it, but we'll never know. But it's just, of it's the journey, and the journey kind of changes with as you're whatever you're looking for. It starts kind of morphing into something different the further you go on the journey. I think in the very beginning of things, it was very much influenced by my grandpa, right? Like giving back to the community because it was like that's what you do, and you need to help other people. That's how it was, and then I got to live it and recognize too that um, not only is it what you do, but some people need help. But then even reading like I read Machiavelli, The Prince, and reading The Prince taught me quite a bit of things. People actually don't like that book too much. I love the book. I've read it probably about 5 times, and I've bought 5 different copies of it because I've given it to friends. I think it's a very interesting book or story. But one of the things that it teaches you there is to not give your soldiers or not give people everything you got, because at one point you're going to be poor. And when you remind people of like, yo, I gave you this and I gave you that, they're going to look at you as greedy. So when you lose all of what you have and you give it to other people and then you need some of that back, you're going to start, looking selfish. And then people are going to hate you. And the worst thing to happen is for the people to hate you. And so that happened at one point in my life where I was just doing everything for free and everything to give out to the people, and then you become broke. And then once you become broke, you can't do anything. So I've learned. I'm trying to learn how to continue to survive and provide for yourself. Putting that mask on first, right when you're on the airplane, the mask of oxygen first, and then you give to others what you have left over. So it's that cool little balance, and that's kind of where I'm getting to now, trying to understand that you need to take care of yourself in order to take care of the rest of the world.
Yeah, 100%. One thing that I talk about before, and I talk a lot about in like training,
Hmm.
is you've worked in the restaurant industry before, and you're also a barber. And when I train people, I tell them to take care of themselves because I'm like, when you are constantly taking care of other people in a restaurant or as a barber or whatever, right? Whatever it is, if you're in a position of service, you're constantly giving yourself to people. You're constantly giving a part of yourself to people to create an experience for them. And it can be
Yeah,
very draining. And we're not even talking about resources. We're just talking about your own like
mental.
your own energy, right?
Hmm.
You're constantly trying to give energy to people to create an experience for them. And when you're doing that a whole day, right? A whole 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hour shift, and then you do that 2, 3, 4, 5 days a week. You've given so much of yourself to other people. What do you have left for yourself, right? So I was train when I train, I try to tell people like, when you're not here, take the time for yourself to recover from that, because it's important to understand, right? Um, that yeah, like you're talking about right now, when you give so much to people, you end up broke, and sometimes you're left like, damn, why isn't anybody giving back to me right now when
Mhm.
I feel like I need it?
Mhm.
So I've definitely had experiences like that too, and gotten down on myself. Like, and maybe that's like a, I say this a decent amount on the podcast. Maybe that's a Taurus thing, Maybe it's a Taurus thing of just being constant givers, in that way. Because I feel like you and I kind of share that in a lot of senses. Um, as I asked you what has been like rewarding about that, one of the things I'm very curious about your own life, because I think about it for me oftentimes, is like, what have been the most rewarding aspects of your life as a total? Not just when it comes to like giving to people or balancing that out, but just when you look at your life currently. I don't know if you're like very retrospective, if you think
Mhm.
like if you're nostalgic at all in that sense.
Mhm.
But do you have like moments in your life where you're like, fuck, that was like a
Awesome.
really rewarding moment?
Yeah.
What can you talk about? I don't know. Name one, talk about it. Name two, talk about it. I
Sure.
want to hear about it. I want to know what makes you, because just like you talked about the why, I think that's a lot of the why when you can
Yeah.
identify those rewarding moments, right?
Right. Yeah, for me there's been a couple of times, man. Actually a couple especially during the pandemic. But prior to that, um rewarding moments or where I've looked back and reflected and I was just like, "Oh, wow. If it wasn't for that or because of that, I was able to do that." When I was younger, my mom and my stepdad, they had a pretty stupid relationship. Like it just wasn't a good marriage. But it wasn't like they didn't want to. I just think they didn't know shit. I just think they didn't know how to have a relationship, and or what each of them wanted. So when I was like 15, I started writing down all the bad shit that I saw them do, and like, okay, I'm not gonna fucking do this as a dad. I'm not gonna do that as a father when my kid does this. So I got that early. 2 years later, I had a kid, and it was like, well, time to put it to the test, dog. Let's see if you were right about this shit. And I've lost that paper since then. I'm sure it's somewhere, but I there was a couple of key things that I kind of stuck to, and so far, so good. And I've been very fortunate about that. The other thing is that even though there was a time in my life and a time in my daughter's life early on that I didn't get to spend that much time with her for, I think there was like 2 years, that I would drive from LA or San Diego and see her like every other weekend when I could. There was times where there'd be a bigger gap, um, and I was at the lowest of my lows. I didn't have anything. I didn't have anything, and I remember I was reading a lot more. I would watch this YouTube video on Will Smith's wisdom, and that's where I learned about the book The Alchemist. That's where I learned a lot. I've always looked up to Will Smith as like a father figure to me. So when he would speak on YouTube, I'd be like, "Fuck, listen." But there was this prayer that I learned about from Napoleon Hill, who wrote this book. What is it? I think he wrote Think and Grow Rich, and then I think How to Earn Friends or something like that. I forgot. It's totally butchered the name of that one. But this prayer that he said, actually, I pulled it up. It says, "Oh, divine providence, I ask not for more riches, but more wisdom with which to make wiser use of the riches you gave me at birth, consisting in the power to control and direct my own mind to whatever ends I might desire." And in the prayer, I wrote that down on this book and I still have it. I carried it with me every day for a long time. But then you also have to say the prayer, say what you want, and then write down how you'll repay it. And so what I realized was I wrote down that I wanted to live with my daughter, that I wanted to be, this is when I didn't have her. I wanted to live with my daughter. I wanted to have a white picket fence. I wanted to have a wife that loved me. I wanted to be a respectable man and I wanted to be super respectful to people. I wanted to help those that had that same desire and ambition to succeed that I do, and that I would pay it back for them with either time or money. If I couldn't afford anything, I'd give them my wisdom or the time and experience that I've had. Um, and I'd say you have to say how you pay it back, and it was with time, uh, money, or any kind of way to help those out. And I didn't realize that I started doing that once I created my block. And when I created my block and I started kind of giving back in a mentorship type of way, or investing in the community financially, I started getting more of those things that I wanted. And I look back on it and I'm like, dude, I've literally everything I wrote down has happened. I don't have the picket fence anymore, but I did. And it was just been a freaking amazing moment to look back on that book during my lowest times and then say that I've made that happen, or not just me, but the universe and your willpower, your desire, but also the more that I do for the community, the more that I pay for what I asked for, the more that I get back what I wanted. And I know that when I start straying away from it, when I start kind of like feeling like, yo, dude, this shit isn't really working out for me right now, I'm struggling. I'm like, well, give back to the community, give back to what you say you were gonna do, and fucking believe it or not, bro, that shit starts clicking. So
100%.
that's one of those moments.
Dope. I love
I'll,
it, man.
I'll talk briefly, real quick, on just
Yeah.
another one. Um, I think one of the I posted about it on Instagram, which is this short film that I wrote, and I wrote it while driving. It's bad, but I wrote it while driving on Highway 5 on one of my visits to see my daughter, and it was on taxes and everything that was going on. And I had already I was already in acting, and but I was leaving L.A. to come back to the Bay during that time, and I thought my acting career was going to be over. But I wrote this anyway, and I did it with my two best friends, and we did it in Hayward in front of the Burlington Coat Factory in Southland Mall. And I submitted it to a film festival. But it was just something that I needed to get off my chest, something that I felt. And I ended up winning an award for the submission of the video of the film. And I got to go to Washington, D.C. I got to meet John Legend, introduce my lady to John Legend as well. And people were talking about the film, and it was a film that had like subtext that it looked like it was about something, but it was really about something else. It looked like it was like a street life gang type film, but it was really about taxes. And to have people talk about the film that were older than me, that probably didn't have the context of what it was about, oh man, that was definitely the highlight of my acting career at that time. I shouldn't put air quotes because it is an acting career for me. And that success, to see it be recognized, not because of celebrities or anything else like that. And as small as it was, it meant the world to me. It meant the world to see something that I wrote, directed, and got a part to do, and it came out of nothing, and it has my city in the background. It meant a lot. And that's the type of acting that I wanted to do. I want to do acting that kind of got people thinking and got people talking a little bit more. So, yeah.
Dope, brother. You said something to me. You said something during that early, and I'm highly curious about it because I have my own experience with it, and learning and understanding it.
Mm-hmm.
But you were talking about how your mom and your stepdad didn't necessarily like have the best relationship or healthiest relationship, right?
Yeah.
Entering into marriage for you, what were the things that led to you learning how to be in a healthy relationship, or how to be in a marriage and operate in that, or if it's still a learning process, and what are the things that you're constantly reminding yourself of? Can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, it wasn't something I'd planned on asking, but I think
Yeah.
it's something that's also important.
I think taking out the expectations of what it is to be in a marriage and what it is, what a wife is, what a husband is, and all that. Because I've had nothing but bad examples growing up, and so if I were to go off of those examples, I would just continue to live that way. So, but there's good in every example, whether it's good or bad, right? Like there's good in it. So I was able to write down the things that I didn't like on both. What's helped me out was kind of taking the pressure off. And I do the same thing with parenting. Like, I don't look at my kids as if they're mine or they belong to me. I look at them as little humans that I was given the privilege and responsibility to guide them to be the best type of human that I can imagine. Like the humans that I kind of want to see on this planet. Not necessarily saying do this, do that, but more teaching the essence of like empathy, or the essence of, being a little bit less selfless, or a little bit more selfless. And, yeah, so I view marriage in a similar way. When I was dating my wife, I definitely wasn't the best partner. I was very selfish, and I thought that I knew what the fuck I was doing. I knew what was going on, and that she had no idea, and that she came from this privileged background and all that bullshit. And I knew what life was like. You know what I mean? I knew the struggle, and I mean, I felt that way. But what helped me out was spending time with her family and seeing a good example because her parents have a pretty fucking great, healthy partnership. Um, they're a little old school, so because of their partnership, there's certain things that they happen to really like doing certain things. The wife or my mother-in-law really enjoys cooking, and my father-in-law really loves his job. And I had a talk with my daughter where they were like, she was kind of like, I don't know how I feel about it, Dad, because like, Oma is in the kitchen, and it's not like she's forced to be in the kitchen because she actually likes being in there, and Pops is working all the time, but she sees it as like, is that one of those like marriages where there's like wife roles and the husband roles, and it's not at all like that. Coincidentally, it just happens to be that that's kind of what they like doing. So what's helped me out is just kind of trying to learn examples and seeing my wife and seeing myself as learning humans, right? As humans that are learning how to be partners. She's never had a husband before. I've never had a wife before. And she's also not mine. She's her own person. And I've learned actually through only little bits. I've never seen that Red Table Talk of Will Smith. This is before the entanglement. This was like one of the first ones where he had said that he's not in charge of her happiness. That really hit me because for a long time I felt like the opposite, like for both of us, right? I felt like she felt that way and I felt that way. And I started taking care of myself. I started going to therapy. I started realizing my own issues and seeing my wife as my partner, someone that's here to help me get better. And I'm here to help her get better as well, and not someone that needs to help me or also that is here to be against me. I think a lot of my relationships with like my mom and seeing my family's relationships, even though they love each other a lot, there's been a lot of that fucking kind of animosity, kind of like constantly jabbing at one another, not very healthy. And I'm staying away from that. I'm going for the uplift instead of like,
Yeah.
You ain't shit. You know what I mean?
I hear that. I think my story is a lot like very similar to that, right? In the sense of like when I got married, I didn't necessarily have a full example of what a healthy relationship looked like. But a lot of what I've learned and taken from are like my wife's parents, my in-laws, and like how they interact with each other and, the love that they show each other. So it's, when you were talking about it initially, I was like, it's not something that we've talked about. When did you start therapy, or when was your first experience with therapy? Was it before your marriage or after?
After. Although I feel like I've done a lot of self therapy from
Mm-hmm.
like just kind of every Sunday I used to reflect for a minute, try to understand why I am the way I am. And it kind of became a little too self-centered for me and for my wife because I was constantly searching for why am I this way?
Yeah.
And so I finally went, instead of venting to her all the time, she kind of persuaded me a little bit more to go to therapy. And I wasn't against it because I was just like, all right, yeah, I could use some help. So I started in
Yeah.
October of 2019, right before
Gotcha.
this whole shit happened.
Interesting. And with that, you know, we've talked on this podcast before about the culture of what a barber is and what a barber should be and how you view that relationship as a barber with the person that sits in the chair, right?
Hmm.
Do you feel like therapy has allowed you to become a better barber? Has it impacted like your relationship with the people that end up sitting down in your chair? Because it is therapeutic. Has your own therapy helped you become more of that for other people?
Heck yeah, man. I think with therapy, a therapy and a mix of the Meisner technique and acting that I took because both of those are pretty therapeutic. They allow you to listen, and they allow you to kind of take yourself out of the situation, and also be empathetic to yourself and to others. Like every asshole out there wasn't born an asshole, right? Like there was things out there that have made their perspective in life to be a certain way, and it's a defense mechanism. And therapy taught me to be kind to my younger self, to the younger Charlie. And when I see people that are kind of struggling, I try not to, I used to take everything a lot more personal. And now, in good and in bad situations, I don't take it. I try not to take it personal at all. You know what I mean? I try to understand that person a little bit more. So therapy has definitely helped out because with clients, I've seen them. I don't like calling them clients. It's more like a guest, like the guest that comes to the chair. Especially now, especially towards the end of it, as I was going through a lot of anxiety, there were a lot of people that I realized were also going through anxiety, and it allowed me to be vulnerable enough with them so that to tell them, hey, I go to therapy for these things. I also feel the fear. I'm also anxious all the time. And it made me more comfortable to talk to them, which also made them comfortable for them to be able to open up. And I do hope that their time with me in the chair helped them feel better when they left and look forward to coming in again to kind of like, hey, I could go talk to my friend Charlie and he's going to pay attention. He's going to try to remember everything that we talked about as much as we can and check in. And yeah.
Dope, brother. You, as you were talking about that, something that I talked to my wife about, even last night, was surrounding like this thought process of like not being so self-centered in like your healing process, right? And like not internalizing like the energy of other people, right? So, I've had situations in my life where I've been like, this person is a bad person because they did this to me, right? And like over the past year or so, I've just started to get away from that. Like that's not necessarily the case. This person just has like maybe different life experiences or has been influenced in a different way where they feel like the act that they're now committing, right, or whatever like they're doing and how it interacts with me, they feel like that is the right way to handle that. And I feel like it's the wrong way because of my own life experiences, because of my upbringing, because of my personality type or whatever. That doesn't necessarily mean inherently that they're a bad person or that they're an evil person, right? That just means that we have a different view of things. And that just may mean that, like, I don't necessarily need to interact with that person in my life anymore. Like you're not made to interact with everybody or to interact in a healthy way with everybody. We're not made as humans to feel happy about every single other human or be satisfied with our interactions with them. Sometimes you got to remove yourself from it and be like, nah, they're acting in this way because of themselves, because of something that they've experienced in the past, or and to remove yourself from it and be like, that's all right. That they have the right to exist in the way that they want to exist, and
Yeah.
I gotta be cool with that. I gotta be cool with myself being like, nah, that's not for me, and it is what it is. So I think in parts of what you were talking about, that makes a lot of sense.
I talked to my sister about that because of it's funny because growing up I felt like I didn't really have a relationship with my stepdad, and because he wasn't talkative and he didn't want kids, and I knew that, and I also I didn't feel welcomed in the house at first, and so it's that filter always stayed in my head. And now my sister, who's his actual daughter, she has a worse relationship with him. Like there's just no very difficult to communicate. They don't see each other. They don't talk to each other. And when they do, it's not the friendliest. And so now I'm like, I feel weird because I actually have a closer relationship with my stepdad than she does with her own dad. Same person, right? But I try to. I think it's all about perspective too, and I feel bad because that's her actual blood, and it's not mine. So I'm able to take the filter off a little bit more. But what tried telling her recently is just like, yo, sometimes labels don't fit the person, right? Sometimes labels don't fit the person. That dude didn't want to have a kid. He had a kid, and he seemed happy about it once he had my sister. But I feel like when you see somebody as a human, you take away those expectations that you have of the title. Whatever brother means to me might not mean the same thing to my sister. Whatever sister means to me might not be the same way to my sister. Whatever father things, titles mean to other people, they're not the same for everybody. And so with my sister, I try to tell her, like, just you got to look at that dude as a human. Just try to find out his past and understand that, yo, that's just who he is. And you can opt to say, well, you fucking sucked as a dad, and say, okay, yeah, that's true. But say, what do I get from you now? Like, what can I learn from you? What kind of relationship do I have from this human to myself? And to me, it's helped me out because I don't expect shit from them. I would struggle with my mom because I have an expectation of what it means to be my mom and what it means to be a parent, right?
Yeah.
But for the most part, when I start looking at her as her own self, not my mom, but as Blanca, and what her life was like and what struggles she went through, it makes sense on why she is who she is. And I'm grateful for everything. You know what I mean? And to
Hmm.
say, yo, I couldn't have done that. If I was that human, I don't know if I could have succeeded the way that she has. Okay, yeah, she fucked up on certain things when it comes to parenting, in my opinion. But given those circumstances, she did pretty fucking well. So I try to take the titles away from
Remove it.
people.
Yeah. I hear that, brother. I hear that 100%. Pivoting a little bit, one of the things I think is like dopest and like super interesting about your own journey in life is, you've pursued acting, you've pursued firefighting, you've pursued barbering. You're now in that role. You know, are there similar reasons for pursuing all three of these things, or were they all driven by something different? And how did they impact your journey or affect your life at the time? And what skills and tools have you gotten? I know you talk about like the Meisner technique from acting, right? And that your ability to pull that into how you operate as a barber. But even with like the firefighting experience or going through that training,
Mm-hmm.
can you talk about the pursuit of those things, but also how it informs what you do now?
I've been asked that a few times because from acting to firefighting is a pretty big jump, and then barbering was always like something that people were like, "Oh yeah, about time," because I've been doing that since I was like 15. Um, but they have tied in. Like acting was something that I wanted to do since I was a kid, and I learned how to speak English from watching television, and then I just loved the idea of being able to do different things with acting, right? You could pretend to be well, here's the thing. You can be a pilot, you could be a superhero, you can be a firefighter, you could be a doctor. And for a long time, when I was a kid, stupid and naive, I was like, whoa, I can be those things. And it was a way to be different things in life. And I thought you'd have to study that and you'd have to dedicate your time to really be that role. And as I started acting more, I realized that you don't have to do all those things. You just pretend to do those things. And that was a little bit heartbreaking for me. But the reason I really loved acting was because, and the reason they all three of them tie in, is that you're able to affect community change. You're able to get people to kind of get together and you're able to help. I feel like acting is a great platform where, I mean, it helped me out in life. Will Smith was a beacon for me on parenting when I didn't have that father figure. Will Smith was that for me. Or Family Matters, right? Those shows taught you kind of family values, and it is programming, but it helped me out. Firefighting for me was a way to, real quick, back to acting. The real talk of that is coming to this country. I felt like I needed to be something great, and I thought acting and being a celebrity was gonna make that for me. I thought that was something grandiose that was going to say that, oh, I've made something of myself, and I no longer chase the celebrity status. I try to stay away from that a little bit, but I did love the acting of it. For firefighting, it was something that, again, community effect change, and you're able to get people to, you're able to give back. But the reality of it was also that I needed something that would teach me discipline, and I needed something that would kind of earn my way to feeling American, right? I needed to have something that would symbolize that I've paid my dues to be in this country. That is probably a truth and an honesty of just like kind of earning your way in there, but definitely community change. And then barbering, cornerstone of American culture, right? You're constantly with community members, and this time the way that you affect change with them is on a personal level. It's not as big as acting, it's not as big as firefighting. It's now personal, that you're talking to that individual. So those three careers all lined up for me when it comes to feeling like you have somebody. And I think that comes from being alone when I came over here. Just kind of looking for that.
So you said you've cut hair since you were 15.
Hmm.
Um, and you've been now barbering for what, 5 years? 3 years? Something like that?
Yeah, licensed, officially
Yeah,
licensed for going on. It's gonna go on 3.
got you. So, when and why? So 3 years ago,
Uh huh.
what were the ultimate factors behind being like, this is what I'm gonna do right now, and like, how have you felt since, man? Like, has it been that enriching for you, and how has the change been from doing it at 15 to obviously I imagine more skilled now, but like, just mentally and emotionally, is it kind of a full circle thing for you? You mentioned that other people feel that way, but is it to some degree a full circle thing for you personally?
It's tricky for me, because I've done barbering since I was 15, so that's 33 now. It's like 18 years. I don't 17. I don't know 17. So it's always been something that I've done, and it's just a way for me to hang out with my friends, right? So people thought that it was about time because you've been doing it for so long. I remember my cousin once telling me like, you didn't come to the U.S. to be a barber, and that shit has stuck with me for a long time. And I struggle with that a little bit, but I am so grateful that I made that leap and made that choice, because I was feeling when I was working at Roadhouse. I was like, dude, I remember I tweeted, it's like, did I really fucking just sell my soul to sell bone and ribeyes? Like, I'm unhappy. I don't like doing what I do. I'm pissed off all the time at management and everything else. For what? For fucking selling steaks? Like, am I giving up my time and my life to do this shit? And I decided, like, nah, I'm not doing it. I talked last time on when we talked about financial literacy, about some of the struggles that I had. Not only is getting into the fire department a difficult thing, but then with the debt that I had, finding out later after I got rejected that it had something to do with that, um, that put me into a depression. But I was just like, okay, how do I take control of my life? And I went to Mark Jason Salofa, and I hit him up, and I was just like, I had gone to other barbershops first to try to talk to him to see if barbering is a feasible career or something. And I went to him and I asked him, like, yo, man, I want to be a barber. Is this really a job that you can have? Can I provide for my family? That was the biggest thing. Can I provide for my family, or do I have to have multiple jobs while doing this? And he was like, nah, you could definitely provide for your family. Um, I left my job and I started doing this. And he put me up on the possibility of it, of the goals that I'm looking for to become possible. And so he told me, like, you got to go to barber school. And when you go to barber school, it's going to feel like high school. You're going to get lost in the mix, or you can. So if you ever get lost, come back over here and we'll refresh your mind to get you back to why you did what you did. And I did that. And it's been the best move, man, because now I don't really have to answer to anybody. I mean, you still have like the shop owner, so you have to abide by the rules of the shop for sure. But for the most part, I can say, no, I'm going to do this, or I can leave at any time. And now I have a skill set that's licensed that allows me to work anywhere, except during a pandemic, which we're going to have a discussion about. But yeah, so I'm very grateful because I consider myself a barber for sure. I love the trade. I love what people do. But there's more to just being a barber. There is a business aspect of it. It's the freedom that you have to say that you can do whatever. And as much as I hated the idea of going into business when I was a kid, I fucking hated the idea of being a business person. I realized that barbering has opened the possibilities for me to open multiple businesses to keep myself doing what I want to do. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity that barbering has given me to do that.
I love it, brother. You're talking about I feel the same way about bartending in some sense, in the fact that like I learned a skill that can take me anywhere. Like, yeah, not during a pandemic right now, but like literally like off of this thing that I decided to do that was like I was unsure about and just hopped into, like I now have connections all over the world, and I can move. Like, it's a skill set where you can move anywhere and find work if you have that juice. You know what I'm saying? Like we were talking about a little earlier. Like if you got the juice with it, man, like you can go anywhere, and I'm sure it's the same with barber. Like being a barber, you can anywhere you go, people are gonna need a haircut to some degree. So
Right.
if you
And
if
I
you,
feel
if you
like
got it like that,
my bad for interrupting. I
no,
feel
you good.
like when my cousin told me about not coming to the U.S. to be a barber, absolutely demeaning, right? And this trade has been uh, put as a very low end trade and blah blah blah, and for racist reasons, right? But fuck it, if that's how they want to consider it, I'm cool with that because it's a fucking gem. You know what I mean? It's a gem for sure. And if people want to be sleeping on it, that's fine, man. The freedoms that you can do with barbering is man. Like you can't
Oh,
do that with a
yeah.
lot of other professions.
No, I hear you because I'll say it like this, man. Like, and this is goes back to like the state of mind I was in at the time in terms of finances when I first cleared. Like, I knew I was making good money doing my taxes. I was like, and people would be like, "Oh, but like, you're just a bartender. Like, you need to go to school for it." And I'd be like, "Motherfucker, like, like what? What are you talking
Yeah.
about?" And like, yeah, that's just like a negative about what the mind frame that I was in terms of like being financially wealthy. But at the same time, like, I've had the ability as a bartender to just eat. You know what I'm saying? To provide for my family, to also travel and to take my wife to places that she's wanted to go to, take her to Puerto Rico. And I know like people that have gone to school for 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, and like to pursue something. No knock on them. Like everybody's on their own journey, but at
Hmm.
the same time, that like I know people who've gone down that path who aren't able to do those things that I've been able to do, not just from a financial standpoint, but also with the freedom to say, like, I have the freedom, like, just like you said, I don't have to answer to anybody. There's nobody to, like, yes, you have the restaurant owners or whatever, but for the most part, like, you have the ability to say, all right, this is my availability. I can work these 3, 4 days,
Yeah.
these 5 days, these 6 days. I have the ability to pick up shifts when I want, when I don't want.
Right.
It's a little bit more flexible, right? But those things are often looked down upon. I think the same way, like bartending, in the same way that barbering is, right?
Right.
Um,
And
but
what's
it's
funny is that
also
those are like key things in life that humans need. You need to drink something, right? You need to do like not just alcoholic beverages or anything else, but
yeah,
like, food. Food is
yeah,
our main thing. And you need to get groomed. Those are basic necessities of human life.
yeah.
So
Nah, 100%, brother. You know, diving in a little deeper on the barbering side, what are I know you talk a lot about like the uh mental emotional aspects of it, right? And it being more than just cutting hair. But
mhm,
are there points of pride you take in like the hair cutting process? Do you
mhm.
feel more skilled in one area of it versus others? Like, what do you feel if somebody were to ask you, like, what it is that you are the best at in terms of barbering when it comes to skills? What is your skill set? You know what I'm saying?
My skill set is making people feel good. I think that's the best thing. I'll get smoked both in speed and in like blend by a lot of barbers. I'll smoke some other ones and I'll outcut some other ones as well. But for the most part, I think I make people feel really good about themselves, or I try to, or at least make them feel of value if they're ever not feeling that way. And I'm consistent. So you're gonna get consistency with me. You're gonna get a definite knowing that I will try my absolute hardest every single time to give you what you're looking for, or make it even better. Um, and yeah, you're gonna come out feeling good. I think that's it. When it comes to actual technique and skill set, I take a lot of pride in the craft of trying to figure out how to do uh, a, a good haircut, right, all around. Not just focus on the blend, focus on cutting the top, knowing how to cut the top, knowing how to texture it. So I study a lot. I study a lot, but I also know that I have limitations. I know that I probably won't do the color wheel. I'm not skilled in that in that aspect of it. I know that it's gonna take a lot because I have a lot of respect for that, and it's gonna take a lot of me to learn all that. And I don't have that much of a desire to learn that too much. I'll leave that to those people that can do color. Um, when it comes to designs, there's some people out there that are beasts at designs, and I used to do them when I was younger. I don't do them that much anymore at all, actually, because I don't have time for it. Like I'm cutting the everyday regular Joe that comes in that works at an office or whatever. So they're probably not going to be looking for designs. Definitely no knock to that. I think that's a beautiful art. That's just not me. So yeah, I think my skill set is more on the emotional and on the consistency of trying to always achieve a level of greatness in the quality of the cut.
Having said that, what are the things you look at in terms of other barbers? What are the things that you view are the most admirable about other bartenders, or not bartenders, I'm sorry, other barbers that you may have looked up to, or that you just view and you're like, yo, they're clean. Like, it is. I'm sure it's more than the cut for you, but are there barbers out there that you've been super influenced by? And can you talk about those influences and why you view them as such?
Yeah, there's a few. I could name four right now that I've looked up to. When I started looking into barbering a little bit more, there was this guy named Matty Conrad, and he had a really good Instagram game, and I actually had no idea that he was a barber. And because his photography was really cool, his images were really cool, and we were kind of doing the same thing at the same time. I had no idea he was a barber, but I would be making shit out of pallets, and then he started making shit out of pallets, and then I got into like French press coffee, and then I see him post about French press coffee. So I was like, oh shit, this guy. For a minute, I was like, this guy's stealing my fucking life, or he's watching me, and we were kind of clicking. And then when I saw that he did hair, I was like, what the fuck? But realizing that he was a barber and able to do all those different things and the freedom that he had really inspired me at first to like, holy shit, there's a as a barber you are free to explore it. So that got me with that, and with him I learned about Mark Jason Salofa, which is who I work with now, and Mark, what he put me on is just like the traditional and the kind of holding yourself accountable as a barber feel, right? And being about family, it tied in for me because he has a daughter and I had a daughter, or I have a daughter. And so I looked up to his demeanor on social media, on the gram, the way that he presents himself. It was really, really, really cool. And so I admired that a lot. And learning a traditional way of doing clipper over comb, a technique that I was very uncomfortable with prior to going to work at his shop. So that was cool. This other dude named Andrew does hair. He's good at photography, and he seems like a. I've spoke with him at a hair show, but he doesn't know who I am, and he just seems really cool about taking not taking cutting hair so seriously, but doing a really good job at cutting hair and photography. It's almost more like he's a photographer that happens to cut hair. So I've appreciated that. And then there's this guy, Mark Bustos, who is probably the least talked about hero of mine because he travels everywhere, cuts at, places where people need haircuts, like for those people that don't have much, unfortunate with difficult circumstances in their life. And he just a humble ass cat, man. You don't hear too much about him, but when you do, he's like the Daniel Day-Lewis. Like, he doesn't come out too often, but when he does, boom, he's making a big impact, and seems like a very humble guy. So I really appreciate Mark Bustos a lot. Yeah.
I love it, man. I love it. I think one thing about my own journey, I feel like maybe it's the same for you, like working with Mark. One thing that like I've been super stoked about is like the people that I looked up to in the beginning are now like people that are like giving me props and giving me credit, and I'm like, yeah, like it was man, it's kind of nerdy. Like Jim Meehan is a huge like bartender, right? Wrote some of the best cocktail books. One of the ones that really like set me off on my journey. And like now he follows me on Instagram. And when he started following me, I was like, "What the fuck?"
Fuck
Like,
yeah.
this dude, like 5 years ago, I was like reading all his shit, and now he's like, he DM'd me. He was like, "Yo, do whoop whoop." I'm not gonna say exactly how that conversation went, but I was like, "Yeah, man." I was like, "Yo, man, like, thanks because you were a person that like when I was first on the journey, like reading all your stuff and super influenced by and motivated by." So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's dope that you get to like really work closely with somebody who you look up to in that sense. Um, having said that, I know you talked about the desire to open, multiple businesses, and how that how barbering has changed your view on what it means to be a business person, right? Do you have? I know you've talked a little bit about working towards some things on the podcast, but do you have like ultimate goals where you're like, this is what I want to do in 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, whatever? Um, or what is it that you're currently working towards with the greatest intensity right now, right? Is it like, do you think about it like 25, 50 years down the line, or are you really just focused on like this year, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, a little bit more short term?
Yeah. Um, I think that for me, the biggest thing when you ask that, I'm like, what the fuck am I working on with full intensity? And it's not a specific project, as in like a tangible project, but it's I'm working on myself. Excuse me. I'm working on my self confidence. I have a lot of confidence in that I can get through shit. I could take the blows, right? Kind of think of a boxer. I think I'm confident that I can get back up and that I can take the blows and take a hit. I'm not as confident sometimes that I could give a fucking haymaker, right? And sometimes I'm like, you're gonna have to fucking pull your punches and give a fucking haymaker at one point. And I'm working on saying that I got that. Stop being a rope a dope and just fucking go out there and start, slaying shit. And so to do that, I have to build confidence, and that's kind of what I've been doing with therapy. That's kind of what I've been doing with just effing go. Even posting shit on Instagram, I've always been like very like, no, what if I come off this way, or I look stupid in that picture, and now I'm like, man, fucking go. Just what's gonna happen,
Yeah, yeah.
So that's been helpful, and so I'm working on a couple of projects, and I feel like a plate spinner. Like there's constantly little plates spinning, and I'm like, go a little bit here, go a little bit there. There's not just one that I'm spinning a lot. I'm working on a patent for a mobile barber chair. I started working on that at the beginning of the pandemic, and one of the things that triggers me into a fucking slump is waiting on people. So when it comes to these things, you have to fucking wait for certain things to line up. And I have a lot of energy, and when I fucking get an idea, I'm like, go, fucking run, keep it going. I'm working on that. I'm working on a way to unionize Alameda County barbers. I want to change the barber hair industry into the health industry for mental health for men and women, but I predominantly get men that come sit in my chair, so that's what I speak on. But it's not like it's anything against women. I just don't get that many women. So those are two projects. One is kind of like a pet project, the patent, and the other one is like something that I think is definitely needed for the barbering community. And then a goal. I love the whole journey of working with Mark. I think has been great. I look back on when I first started working there, when I first went to go talk to him, and then the connections that he kind of made for me. He introduced me to Matty Conrad, which is the first dude I talked about, and confidence. And now I know how to do not just a blend. I could do the hair. I could do a lot of things. That's thanks to him, and thanks to also myself for putting myself in situations where I'm like, learn, go and fucking do more. But a goal of mine is to open up a barbershop now. Like at first I wasn't sure if I wanted to. I mean, you always want to, but I feel like because Mark has been a mentor to me, there's a level of like you stay in someone's shadow in a way, and I want a mutual respect, and I feel like a way that I could get a respect from Mark and other barbers, because you can be critical of the way that somebody runs their barbershop or someone does their business, just like I was critical of how my parents parented. And I think in order to fucking actually be worth the shit that you talk is, well, go out and try
You gotta
it.
do it.
You got to do it. So my next goal is, I want to earn Mark's respect, not just as one of his barbers and his barber brothers or anything else like that, but also like, yo, let me show you what I can do. You know what I mean? And I'm gonna make my own shit as well. So that's the goal for barbering for me, and the actual barbering aspect and business aspect, because I admire Mark's game plan that he's had. I think it's a fucking great game plan, and it's something that I had written up before, but I actually got to see him actually do it, and I'm like, fucking sick. So, yeah. But nothing with full intensity. I feel like because of doing all these fucking plate spinning, the most has been working on myself, getting myself ready for war, I guess.
I mean, that's the foundation of it all. You
Yeah.
can't, and not to say that you can't. There are plenty of people that go on to build successful things while not necessarily taking care of themselves. But I think if you want to, like, and I think it's a goal of both of ours is to build something sustainable for ourselves for the future that leads to great things, not just for us, but for people that we love. Like, in order to do so, you have to be in a healthy place to be like, this can sustain long after, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Dope, brother. I just really have one more question. It's going to be a short one. It's, for anybody listening, and even not for anybody listening, but even for maybe your younger self, man, what is one piece of advice you would give for anybody on a journey or for your younger self, looking back maybe even 10, 15 years ago, like one piece of advice you would give yourself?
One piece of advice. It's okay, right? It's gonna be okay, and it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay, and it's perfectly perfect to be you, because when you're setting other people free, and you set other people free to be who they want to be, and until they see you do it, they'll feel like they can't. And so, yeah, be you, man. Be you. Please set other people free. And to my younger self, just fucking go, bro.
Just fucking go. Charlie, man, I appreciate you. One thing in listening to this, going back a question, right? Here's a big thing for me and a goal of mine with this podcast is like, you and I aren't where we want to be, right? And hopefully, like, not even hopefully, at some point it's going to get there to wherever it is that you and I both want to be, not just with this project, but also in our individual lives. And an important part of that is the journey itself. It's not like once you get to where you want to be and once you succeed, then you tell everybody, "Oh, look at me, I succeeded." I think it's important to document that, like, neither of us are really at the point where we want to be yet, but we're both striving for it and we're both working for it. So, like, my hope is in 2 years and 3 years and 5 years and 10 years, we can look back on like this 9.1 and 9.2 and say, when you do own your barbershop, to know that, like, you spoke it on here, right? And it's documented, and like, we'll fucking have this shit forever to be like, yo, we talked about this 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and to look back on the progress and be like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a crazy journey. Any last words on your little interview, brother?
No, man. Thank you for interviewing me. I feel like there's probably things when that I feel that I can't quite put into words quite yet. But I fucking appreciate this because it brings it out of you to kind of search within about what are those things that matter. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much for this.
100%, man. And for everybody listening, thank you for tuning in on this 9th episode, but also on all the episodes prior. We hope to continue this journey with y'all and continue to tune in because we have special plans, and it's all a part of the journey. It's all for the love of the journey. So like, subscribe, share, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, and we will see you all next week for special episode 10. Peace.